Hello, BookTube. I saw a video today on Elizabeth's channel, Bouquins Books, where she talks about an upcoming BookTube event, People in April, that she is hosting along with Roz at Scallydangling About the Books, which is designed to celebrate life writing of all kinds, contemporary biographies, contemporary memoirs, big old fat biographies, multi-volume biographies from ages past, reading biography in April, People in April, an event that I, though not Elizabeth or Roz, dare to call People. Of course, I want to sing this thing from the rooftop since biography is my favorite kind of writing. Elizabeth did a video of her pile of possibilities for People in April, and I want to do the same. A pile of obvious possibilities for People in April for people. Just a few suggestions for you. I don't actually know the full scope of my own reading in April. I will do more. I read tons of biography anyway. Read and reread tons of biography anyway. And of course, the book world, which is new releases in the American book market, is my beat. It's my bailiwick. They keep me well supplied. Those publishers keep me well supplied with new biographies, but I want to read old ones as well. I will read more biographies in April than I usually do. Biographies, of course, being a genre of writing much like mystery novels for March Mystery Madness that I could not possibly restrict myself to read only in 1 month. I can restrict myself when it comes to garbage. I can restrict myself to Garb August, except for all the new books that are garbage and don't know it. But the garbage where you get the sensation that the writer is in on the joke, I can save that for August. Same thing with Westerns. There are no such thing as important Western writers anymore, so I can save all of my Western reading for June on the Range. And vintage science fiction for Rocket Summer this summer. Vintage science fiction, pre-New Wave science fiction, gets almost no new editions with new introductions and new notes or anything like that. Science fiction genre doesn't take it seriously, so no one else does. So I can save that for July as well. But biographies, no. I read biographies all the time. So I'm making suggestions to you now that aren't necessarily things that I will reread. Although one of the things on this list I kick myself about. It is a genuine howling regret. We'll get to that. The first one I want to show you is by Carol Felsenthal. And this is her biography of Lady Alice, so-called Lady Alice, Alice Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt's daughter, who was the belle of the ball, the toast of the town. She was a major media personality in her own right. The first of the century that was like that. And she led a fascinating life. She wasn't just Theodore Roosevelt's headline-grabbing tempestuous daughter. She went on to know every president. She was unofficial Washington royalty for a long, long time. Grew to a ripe old age, and lived to be 200 years old and let you know it every minute of every day at every single Bethesda party. But it's a fascinating life, and she's been covered a number of times. This book, I think, is a little bit less breathless than a lot of biographies of her. Oh, we put the bean right in the focus there. It's a little bit more grounded. I'm sorry that it has been overshadowed by all the biographies of her that come since. She's had no shortage of them, but it's very good if you can find it. You use bookstore or your library. Then we have something. This is by Andrea Marcolongo. This definitely counts as under the umbrella of People in April. Because it's not, although it's not strictly a biography, it is very much biographical, autobiographical, grounded. It is life writing. And the umbrella, I believe the umbrella for People in April is fairly broad. If someone's life is the focus of the narrative, then fine. It doesn't even have to, I would imagine, doesn't even have to be nonfiction. This is a book that, it's one of those oddities that happen about 24 times in the American book market that I know of, where advance word, my colleagues in the trade journal world, will start to say, hey, this isn't usual. This is quite good. And also, publicists, bless their hearts. I love them. They're the hardest working people in the book world. And they are supposed to love all of their books equally. All the books on their docket for that season, they are supposed to love and talk up equally. But you get to know some publicists, and some of them, they'll sound a different note when they have taken a book home and it genuinely stands out. It's to the point where these factors can come together into some sort of The opposite of a dark cloud hanging over a book. And that was definitely true with this book. This is called The Art of Running, Learning to Run Like a Greek. And it was definitely true with this book before I dug into it. I was expecting that the navel-gazing would rule the roost here. This is the 21st century, after all, where people think that because they have an active Twitter profile, they lead an interesting life. They don't at all. That's never true. But this is not that. All of that forewarning, all of those tremors in the air were true. This is a marvelous book and deeply autobiographical. So this one is brand new. So there is a chance that it will be at your library and in your bookstore. Give it a try. Give it a try. I would say, I don't think the author would like me saying this, but I would say probably this will hit you harder if you are a runner or have been a runner. If you have experience with what it's like. I have. For years and years and years. I miss it. For years and years and years, I ran every night. 3 miles every night. Never more than that, never less than that, never varied my route. Just for the cleaning out. Those of you who've never actually ran, it cleans you out like nothing, except maybe swimming. But swimming is such a big deal. It's such a falderall. I wish it weren't, because if there's anything I love more than running, it's swimming. But swimming, you've got to find a facility. You've got to deal with the people there. If you go at the wrong time, the lanes will all be crowded. You've got to deal with the damage that the chlorine does to your skin and your hair and even your taste palate, your eyes. You've got to deal with the locker rooms and the who wants to trek across town from a pool in the middle of winter. All that sort of stuff. Whereas with running, you can carry along your own homeostasis. It's much easier to do, is what I'm saying. It's much easier to arrange, unless you have a pool in your house. But I'm not sure how many people listening to this channel have a swimming pool in their house. But I did run for a long time, and the reason I did it is because it cleans you out. Like nothing I can think of, it cleans you out. It's tremendous. I miss it. And this book captures it really well. Maybe not. I'm sure that this would work even if you've never done running, yourself outside of school, maybe, or recreationally. I'm sure this would work for you. But if you have, it'll work a lot more. Then we can move on to Rudolf Willock. This is a classic. It's been reissued many, many times. The version that I had, most often, the text was prized out and put into an oversized paperback art book with tons of great reproductions of the artwork in question. I wish I still had that volume. Every once in a while, I find it at the Prattle Bookshop and manage to give it away. And I wish I the bees beating the lie there. I wish I still had it. I'm sure that the Prattle will provide it. It will turn up again. This is his book on Bernini, the great Baroque artist Bernini, whose artwork tends to get lost. One page in an art. Are you going to give us some Frieda yoga, baby? She always does that. She raises her paw like she's diving into the Grand Canyon. Oh, there you go. Oh, goodness gracious. How long can you hold that pose, little baby? Oh. She's feeling a little bit keyed up because on our most recent dog walk, we encountered a lovely young woman walking 2 enormous pit bulls. I mean, 5 feet wide. They look like house appliances rather than dogs. These 2 gigantic things. If they had wanted to pull her off her feet and free themselves, they could easily have done so. But they didn't want to. They were both just wonderful boys, just sweet and quiet-natured boys. And, of course, Frieda read them the riot act. I was trying to tell her they could eat you like an hors d'oeuvre. They wouldn't even notice that it happened. No, it didn't matter. But anyway, Bernini. The point I was trying to make is that Bernini is great, and he's worth granular study for his artwork. His sculptures are just this side of miraculous. You look at them, pictures of them. This is the volume that I had, this larger or this oversized art book. You look at his sculptures and you think, well, that's not so hard if you arrange the drapery just so. But it's stone. It's stone that he got to look like that. It's just amazing. And the reason I bring it up for people is because this is all that we know about Bernini, too. It's not hard to write a biography of him that also includes, a catalog of his work. Okay, then we can move to a great work of biography. Oh, okay. A great work of biography by a great scholar. The scholar is Roland Bainton, and this is his book, Here I Stand, A Life of the Pig, Martin Luther. But a great life. Luther has had a weird disparity in biographies. It's odd that there aren't more good, scholarly, popular biographies that are not ideology-driven to talk about. This one is not ideology-driven, and it is brilliant. I hate to say it, but I give credit where it's due. This author wrote a biography of other religious figures, wrote a biography of Erasmus as well, wrote all sorts of other things. This is the best thing he ever did, and it's amazing as a life of Luther, so I recommend it. Then we have something by Benson Bobrick, who is better known to me as a historian of the American Revolution, but this is his biography of Ivan the Terrible, Fearful Majesty, which makes a great reading experience, even though this is dealing with one of the worst people who's ever lived in the world. One of the worst people ever is Ivan the Terrible. There's a reason why we have these sobriquets, these adjectival describers of some rulers' names, and they don't get to choose. It's history and usage. It's the people who get to choose. And we have almost no the terribles. Almost none. Ivan is the terrible and richly deserved. You will be glad when he dies at the end of the book. Spoiler alert. Oh, okay. Then we have the regret here. This is by a scholar named Roland. And years and years and years ago, he decided to do a multi-volume biography of Kaiser Wilhelm. One of the most volatile and insane and eruptive and weirdly fascinating figures at the beginning of the 20th century. There's no way to know what the early 20th century, especially the First World War, would have looked like if he had not been alive, or if he'd been sane. In other words, if he'd had two whole arms. One of his arms was withered because it had been pincered to death during his birth. If he had been a whole in body, who knows what the world would look like today? Really, it comes down to little things like that. A clumsy forceps. But I read these things as they were coming out. At the time, I had unimpeded access to a university library that got just everything. Oh my God, the endowment just through the roof. They got everything that anybody even slightly suggested. And so I read these, and I recognized them at the time as monuments of scholarship. Just, when this is happening. When someone has complete command of all of the relevant sources, knows all the languages, has studied in every little bolt hole in Europe, and come up with something that is meant to be definitive. This is the definitive life of Kaiser Wilhelm. The question is, do you want to spend this much time with Kaiser Wilhelm? I didn't think I did, and I'm not sure that I would be able to read these books back to back. But it didn't matter because I never see them, ever. At the Brattle, occasionally I will see the one-volume abridgment that Roland did of these volumes, but never all three. And just last week, when David Murphy and I were at the Book Barn, I saw all three on the shelf in perfect condition trade paperbacks, and I didn't get them. I thought, I don't even know what I thought. That I already have a full tote bag and a squirmy dog in one hand. It's too much for me to carry. I don't know where David is. I'm not 100% sure that if David hadn't been right next to me with an open tote bag and said, here, let me carry these for you, I'm not sure that I would have said no. I was also thinking, will you ever reread them? Will you do that? Will you spend this much time with this crazy nut job? I don't know what I was thinking, but I left them behind. It's a big regret of mine. I shouldn't have. I'll never see them again. I know you type A people are going nuts with the spine design, but I didn't do it. It's not my fault. But if you're in the mood for a hugely ambitious people in April, well, a multi-volume biography is the way to go, right? That's how you show your true colors. I will not be reading any multi-volume biographies in April unless April's used book hunting coughs one up for me and suddenly it feels right. I doubt that will happen. Also, I sometimes think that multi-volume biographies are a little bit of an admission of defeat on the part of the biographer. But biographers do all that research. They spend all that time away from their families, burrowed down in the archives. Oftentimes that creates in them a mania to punish the reader by pouring all that research out onto the page. So we could go to another example, an earlier example of a 3-volume life. This is a scholar named Ehrman, and he wrote a 3-volume life of Pitt the Younger. That is Pitt the Younger as a relatively young super hottie, but I don't have a picture of the books because they are hard to come by. Really hard to come by. I had the whole set once upon a time, probably 25 years ago. I had the whole set that I'm sure I found at the Prattle. And I have not seen them since. It's a big, exhaustive study of the man who did more than any other single individual, in my opinion, to make the modern England, to lay the groundwork for the modern England, literally the flooring and the brickwork upon which the house of empire would be built. And a fascinating figure, too. A little bit buttoned down for my taste, certainly a wild change from Kaiser Wilhelm, but Ehrman does a great job of writing this life. It's scholarly, but it's a very fluid reading. I don't know why I gave mine up. It could be that I didn't give them up. Once I've told this story before on this channel, but once upon a time, I had a house fire while I was not present. While I was in Washington, D.C., I had a house fire. And the fire was quickly controlled, but only because the fire department overcompensated. They went nuts. And one of the ways they went nuts was just to funnel water into the apartment. They broke the front window, the big front window of the front room, and had a jet of water from the street, from the hoses on the engine, arcing through the window and straight through the air of the living room and blasting nonstop for an hour against the back wall of the living room. There was no fire there. They were just taking precautions. But what was there was a whole floor-to-ceiling wall of biography, probably 1,000 volumes of biography that I'd meticulously assembled. I used to spend so much time at that wall, and almost everything on that wall was destroyed. So it could be that Ehrman's 3-volume Pitt the Younger was there, and I've never had a chance to recoup it because I've never seen it since. But your library, if you have a good academic library, they might have it, and that's a way to earn your big boy boots for people in April, is to read some massive multi-volume biography. Then we can go to something much smaller, something smaller and far more elegant. A wonderful book that I just reread in 2024. This is Journal of a Solitude by May Sarton, which is ostensibly on the surface, as you're reading it, the note she's hitting over and over again is what it's like to be alone, what it feels like to be alone, what puttering around feels like. Very small scale, very small stakes biography, autobiography, just a transcribed journal that you would think would not make compelling reading, but oh my God, does it. But this second read-through, the reread that I did this year, really brought to mind, it is about solitude, but it's also about writing. I honestly think, now, the more I think about it after this reread, the more I think this may be one of the best books about writing that I've ever read, even though that's not how it bills itself, and I don't think that's how she talked about it. Okay, then we have Ian Buruma, who's, jack of all trades, master of many, a great popular writer of nonfiction and lives and history and essays and whatnot. And he is entering into the Jewish Lives series for, I think, Princeton or maybe Yale. They do a Jewish Lives series, these tiny little books, they're no more than 150 pages, of notable Jews throughout history. It's all different authors. Everybody, you get a brief and you write the book, and so it can be uneven. I don't know what to expect. This is one of the books on this list that I haven't read yet. He's doing a new life of Spinoza, of Baruch Spinoza. Naturally, this is not the life of Baruch Spinoza that I want that's coming out now. This thing is 120 pages long. That's 120. And there is a life of Spinoza that came out late last year that I would really like to get my hands on. That's 1200. It's 1,200 pages long. And that will suit me more. I haven't seen that book yet. Really hoping that I do. It's a little bit late getting to me, but I can still have hope. Then we have Robert Louis Taylor. This is an old classic. I'm sure this is out of print, and I doubt that it will ever come back into print, by a figure who is a footnote, extremely colorful, a lot more to her than just her cartoon. This is called Vessel of Wrath. It's a life of Carrie Nation. And your eyes are not deceiving you. That is an axe that she is carrying on the cover. She was notorious for carrying an axe that she used not against people, but against kegs of whiskey, barrels of alcohol, wooden barrels of alcohol. That was her shtick. She was an arch prohibitionist, but she was also an arch prohibitionist for everything else too. Basically, if you enjoy it, Carrie Nation hated it. And she grabbed a lot of headlines that way. She was a larger than life figure. But the great thing about this book, which, oh my God, I haven't seen this in years. the great thing about this book is exactly what the subtitle promises, which is it's not just Carrie Nation's life, it's also the life of her time, the fundamentalist era that brought about prohibition, the way that America has always had an ambivalent relationship to its own pleasures, thanks to our infamous Puritan founding. There have been a couple of other biographies of Carrie Nation, but this one is so much fun to read. I would snap it up if I found a copy. And then we can finish up with a biography of Virginia Woolf, who's had no shortage of biographical treatment. You could easily spend the whole of your April reading Virginia Woolf life writing of all kinds. Of course, multi-volumes of her diaries, multiple volumes of her letters. Her own nearest and dearest wrote books. Her friends, her relatives wrote books. And there have been a bunch of biographies that are, many of them, dense and abstruse. Some of them dense and abstruse in ways that give biography a bad name. This is, in some ways, an elusive subject, even though she wrote every thought she ever had. So in this case, more than in most, I know I'm taking you from one end of the spectrum to the other, multi-volume biographies where authors just can't shut up about their subject. This is a rare instance where a much shorter biography is actually very, very good. This is Vivienne Forrester, her life of Virginia Woolf. And it's tiny. It's 200 pages long and beautiful. Just beautiful. Just beautifully done. I know that that on this channel and in real life, I am a big proponent of big, fat biographies. I love them. I love to lose myself in a big, fat biography. I'm not so sure that I want to lose myself in a 3-volume biography of Kaiser Wilhelm again. Not back to back. I was reading those things as they were coming out, and that lessened the shock. But even so, even though I'm a big fan of big, fat biographies, my shelves are full of them. I really appreciate a short biography that's done well. A short biography that doesn't feel short. And there have been a whole bunch of those. Famously, I've mentioned many times before, Elizabeth Hardwick's biography of Herman Melville is an excellent example of that, and so is this. This isn't quite that short, but it's a wonderful life of Woolf in very little space. It'll take you a day to read. So there you go. Those are a few suggestions, plenty more where they came from, for people in April. Now, I will leave a link to Elizabeth's video down below where she talks about her own pile of possibilities. This is my pile of obvious possibilities, because we're gearing up. It's not that far to go. We have less than a week until we turn the corner onto April. Are you planning on reading a biography in April? Have you ever read a biography for fun? Despite all my harping on the subject over the years, have you resisted? Do you need recommendations? If you want recommendations, I'd be happy to make them on any kind of subject. I go hunting far afield on biographies. I even read biographies of people who I can't stand. Artists that I think are frauds, writers that I think are terrible. I'm a sucker for the genre. So are you planning on joining people in April? Tell Steve all about it. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.